Hey guys, it's MandaPanda. Before Princess Cadence, the Crystal Empire was ruled by the evil King Sombra, and that's who we're going to be making in this video today. I'm going to be using a Rainbow Power Rarity figurine and transforming her into King Sombra. The set comes with this adorable skirt and this hair brush, but I don't need them, so I'm going to stick them to the side. To give you an idea of the size, here's a typical G4 pony that I normally customize, and you can tell that this Rainbow Power Rarity is like huge compared to those G4 ponies. To get started, I am removing her cutie mark and eyes with some acetone, and then I'm going to remove the head by twisting it to the side until it pops right out, just like this. And it's time to remove the hair. I'm using some large scissors and I'm going to cut off all of Rarity's gorgeous hair, and I'm going to cut it as close to the root as I possibly can. And here's this big bunch of hair, and I'm just going to throw it away because I don't need it anymore. Going in with some smaller scissors, and I'm going to cut off all the hair until I get it super close to the root, and it looks like this. And she's like really bald and it looks sad. Using some long nose pliers, I'm going to reach into the head and pull out the entire hair plug. And so you're going to be pulling out all the hair and glue from directly inside the head. And this head is now ready to be rehaired, customized into King Sombra. And on this particular pony, I was able to keep the neck plug in. I didn't have to remove it. I went in with my tweezers and I scraped on the inside to get all that hair out. Removing the tail is a lot easier. You can cut off some of the tail to make it short, reach in with your pliers and simply pull out that entire plug of hair. And now the head and the body are completely ready to be transformed. I'm going to start off this customization by redoing Rarity's horn and making it into a horn like King Sombra's. Using an X-Acto knife, I'm going to cut off about half of the horn, so just the tip of the horn, and I'm going to remove that like that. Sorry, Rarity. Using some air dry clay, I'm using the Sargent Art sculpted clay. I'm going to freeform a horn that kind of goes up and back, just like King Sombra's evil looking horn that he has on the top of his head. And I really like the shape of this. You're going to want to put this to the side and let it completely dry. It'll probably take about 24 hours, so you can just let it dry overnight. While the horn is drying, I'm going to go ahead and start on his body. I'm going to be using a very dark gray nail polish from OPI called 99, but if you have acrylic paint, you're more than welcome to use acrylic paint. I'm just using nail polish because I happen to already have it, because I love doing my nails actually, so I have tons of nail polishes at home. And I'm going to take that nail polish and I'm going to give the body 2 coats, and that should be enough to make it completely opaque and a solid dark gray, just like King Sombra's base. And there's the body, completely dry, came out super nice. Back to the air dry clay, guys. I'm gonna start on all of the metal armor that King Sombra has at the bottom of his legs. I'm using a marker because that's what I have on hand to roll out a very, very thin piece of clay. So can you see how thin that is? I mean, it's super thin. And I'm going to cut out a wide rectangular shape and see how that looks on his leg. So I'm just kind of eyeballing this right here. Just gonna cut out a rectangle, like a long strip like this. This is probably enough for like 2 legs, but I'm just kind of trying to see the size first. And this is too narrow. I think it needs to be wider. So I'm going to redo this off camera and make a wider sheet of clay. I've gone ahead and I've done that. I've cut those sheets of clay into 4 tiny rectangular pieces, and I've also made 4 smaller rectangular pieces that's going to be the top layer of King Sombra's armor, just like this. To give it the shape, I'm marking off where the middle is on the clay, and I'm just making this a very, very small, short mark. You don't want to make the mark too big because we're not going to go too deep. Taking whatever knife you have, I'm going in and I'm putting 2 cuts into the clay to give it a V shape at the top, and just a little bit. See, I didn't go too far down. So I'm going to repeat that process on all 4 pieces of clay, the big ones, and then on all 4 of these small pieces of clay, and you're going to end up with this. Using a toothpick, I'm going to etch out 2 sets of lines on each large piece of clay. And this is going to give the pieces of clay the illusion of being like stacked pieces of armor, just like King Sombra has on his legs. Taking those pieces, I'm going to directly apply them to King Sombra's legs. To make the clay stick, I've wet it on the back with a paintbrush, but you could use just your finger if you wanted to. And I'm going to layer the big piece on top of the small piece, just like this. And then I'm just going to press that down. This is a thin piece of clay that I've cut out, a little strip. I'm going to completely wrap that all around the leg towards the top. And I'm going to cut it, but leave a little bit of extra because this clay does shrink a little once it's dry. I'm going to repeat this process using a thicker slice of clay at the bottom of King Sombra's legs to recreate the exact same look that King Sombra has in the comic book and in the cartoon. He was in the cartoon as well. And you can see that I've used my X-Acto knife to cut out an angled shape down at the bottom, and I'm going to repeat this process on all 4 legs. Here's the finished product. I've used some water and my finger to smush together the edges and the creases of all of the clay pieces, so that way it kind of looks seamless. There's a little bit of dirt on there, but I'll just rinse that off after the clay has dried. So I'm gonna let that dry overnight. Once the clay is fully dried, it's time to paint. I'm going to be using a nail polish by OPI called Push and Shove. I love this polish because it is literally like liquid metal, but if you don't have that, you could always use a metallic acrylic paint. I am putting a clear top coat on dry clay, and then I'm going to put 2 to 3 coats of my silver nail polish on there and let that completely dry. Once it's dry, I'm going to go in with the same dark gray nail polish that we used on Sombra's body, and I'm going to etch that into the lines that we made with the toothpick earlier, and that looks super awesome. Now it's time to give King Sombra his tail. King Sombra has jet black hair, so that's the hair that I have. I've taken a strand of hair, well, several strands of hair, and I've cut them in half, and then I've folded a half piece in half, secured it with a twist tie, and pushed that twist tie into the hole at the back. Using my long nose pliers, I'm just gonna pull out that entire bunch of hair, not all the way, about this much is fine. Remove the twist tie and use a zip tie to fully secure all that hair in place. So get that zip tie and make it as tight as you possibly can, so that way none of the hair comes out. And then use some scissors to trim off the excess, and you can pull that tail right through. And King Sombra has a very short tail, so I'm just gonna use my small scissors and give him a little haircut here. That's the last step for the body, so I'm going to move on to the head because the horn has completely dried. I delicately, gently removed the horn, and now I'm going to secure it in place with some Gorilla Glue. And I'm going to let that Gorilla Glue completely set before I move on to the next step. Once the horn is completely glued down, I am going to start painting Sombra's head. Using the same dark gray nail polish, I'm going to give his head 2 coats of paint, and I'm only going to paint the bottom of the horn. What I've done is I have actually cut off just the tip of Rarity's nose, so that way it creates a flat, more masculine nose opposed to the very rounded nose that Rarity has. So I got both layers of paint on there. Now I'm going in with a bright red nail polish, and I'm going to paint the rest of King Sombra's horn red. Once the red has dried, I'm going in with a small cosmetic sponge, and I'm just dabbing on some more gray, so that way the gray and the red areas kind of fade into each other and have more of an ombre effect, like this. Now this looks a little crazy here, but what I've done is I have taken some striping tape for nails, and I have just mapped out King Sombra's hairline. So King Sombra has the little arrow shapes down the front of his face, and then he has his hairline that's like a sharp V shape. So I've used some black acrylic paint, and I've just painted in between the lines. And while the acrylic paint is still a little bit wet, I'm going to remove all of my striping tape. And I know it's a little hard to see on camera with the lighting that I have, but those lines came out super crisp. Now I'm just gonna freehand King Sombra's it's like his beard that he has. So it goes all the way from his ear and it reaches to his mouth, creates like a little curl, and then it goes right back into his head. So I'm just going to draw that out and then completely fill that in with paint. Now that the hair's done, it's time to move on to King Sombra's eyes. King Sombra has very mean looking angry eyes, so I'm starting off by drawing his eyebrows into the shape of a check mark. Just like that, and I'm using black acrylic paint for this. Then I'm going to go in and draw one straight line underneath the check mark, and then that's going to be the beginning and the end of the eye area, like that. Using some lime green acrylic paint, I'm just going to paint about half of the eye area, and that actually took about 5 coats of acrylic paint, and it took a while for that to dry. And I also went ahead and drew in his mouth and his teeth off camera while I was waiting for the green acrylic paint to dry. Now I'm going to take some red acrylic paint and draw in the eyeball area. So I'm giving it a little bit of a rounded edge there. Now I've mixed a little bit of black and a little bit of red acrylic paint, and that's what I'm going to be using as the center of his eye. And the finishing touch here is just going to be one white light reflection in his eye. And just like that, King Sombra's face is all done. I'm just going to go over this with a clear top coat to seal all my work in. And here it is, all sealed in. This is coming out so great. He looks a lot like the cartoon. Now it's time to do his hair. So I'm gonna be using My Little Pony Brilliant Black Hair from dollyhair.com. And I have cut this hair into quarter sections, so 1/4 of the length of, one strand of hair, and I've wet it to make it a lot easier to work with. I'm going to be using my rehairing tool. It's basically a needle with a fork at the end. I'm going to take a small bunch of hair, probably like 8 strands, and I'm going to grab those strands of hair right in between the 2 forks at the end of my rehairing tool, and then you just press that directly into one of the holes in the back, and just like that, the first plug of hair is in. So 1 down, a bajillion to go. So let's get all of this hair in for King Sombra. And this hair is kind of long, so I'm probably going to give King Sombra a haircut once all the hair is in and completely glued down. And fun fact, Sombra means shadow in Spanish, so I guess he can also be known as the Shadow King. I thought that was pretty neat. Yes, more than halfway through now. Almost there, sort of. And once all the hair's in, you have to secure it, because if you don't, the hair will pull out if you tug at it or try to style it. So I'm just using some fabric glue here, and I'm pouring it directly into the head, and then I'm going to use a Q-tip to push that glue directly into all of those hair plugs. Once that glue has completely dried, so it needs to dry first, you can attach the head back to the body. Now, I'm going to give King Sombra his awesome cape, his kingly cape. I have a small piece of red velvet material that I picked up, and I'm going to use some hot glue to glue this cape directly onto King Sombra's body. Just like that. And back to the air dry clay. King Sombra has lots of little details. I'm going to roll out another very thin sheet of clay, and this is going to be for the medal that King Sombra has around his neck. I've cut out a large rectangular piece, and I'm just going to measure it and see if it's long enough to go completely around his neck. And it looks like it is. So I'm going to cut this piece in half and then cut it down into a shape like you just saw on screen. I'm going to take that piece and I'm going to trace it out to make a second one of the exact same size and shape. And I'm going to place those pieces onto King Sombra's neck, but I am not putting any water on the back. I am not gluing these pieces onto his neck, because I think they might fall off since all the fabric's in the back. So I'm just going to place them to shape them. And then I'm going to use the same trick with a toothpick. And I'm going to pencil in 2 lines on his little neck piece. Probably like right there and right there. Just like that. And I'm going to put those to the side and let those completely dry. While it's drying, I'm going to work on this next part for the eye, which is completely optional. I've cut out the front piece of plastic from the packaging of Rarity, and using a Sharpie or a marker, whatever you have on hand, I'm just kind of going to put little tick marks to mark out the width of the eye, and then I'm going to freehand and cut out a little piece of plastic that's in the shape of smoke, because when King Sombra is going to attack, he actually has purple smoke that comes out the corner of his eyes, and I want to recreate that look. So I've actually cut out 2 pieces of plastic in the same size and shape, and I'm going to be painting them with this purple nail polish by China Glaze called So Jelly. While that's drying, I'm going to work on the last detail for King Sombra, and that's the fur that's around his cape. I just have some white faux fur that's trim that you can find in the trim section of a craft store, and I'm going to hot glue a really thin piece of that all along the edge of his cape. And once that's down, I'm going to glue all the other parts back on, and here's the finished product. Here is the finished King Sombra. So we transformed Rarity into King Sombra. What do you think? I think he came out super awesome. If there is another tutorial that you would like to see done on my channel, let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear your suggestions. Thank you so much for watching, little pandas. Until next time, bye. You can find me online. For the latest news and updates for the channel, you can follow me on Instagram, MandaPanda Toy Collector, like my Facebook page, facebook.com/MandaPanda Toy Collector, or you can add me on Snapchat, MandaPanda TC.